Snow.
You want snow, but you want warmer weather.
I do, but sorry. It's wintertime, so it should probably stay cold. And I'm not going to complain about a high 58 on Christmas Eve, but it's Christmas Eve, December. That might be a little bit of a problem.
Yes. And you brought up a very good point. Stay cold, sustainable cold. We have not had that this winter.
No, we have not.
It rains, it gets cold, it snows, and boom, we're back in the 50s. You might be wondering why, Chad.
Roller coaster.
Why?
Why?
What pattern do we need to be in to have a sustainable cold pattern for a couple of weeks on end so we can enjoy a couple of weeks of snow? Well, I took a closer look.
El Nino.
And El Nino is part of it.
El Nino.
As well as a couple other patterns. All right, folks, there's typically 4 weather patterns that dominate during the winter. The Pacific Trough, the Pacific Ridge, the Greenland High, and the Alaskan Ridge. What these graphs are showing is the dominant weather pattern going forward through the early part of next year. Notice the Pacific Trough pattern is most favored going through the month. And let's play it here. All right, Pacific Ridge doesn't have a prayer of getting in here. The Alaskan Ridge, very slim chance. Greenland High is showing some signs that it may start to develop in the early part of January, but the Pacific Trough is dominating our weather trend at least through the end of the month. All right, pause here. So the Pacific Trough regime typically brings mild weather into the east with periodic rain, which is exactly what we are going to see around Christmas time. Very warm weather across the western part of the United States and dry, and the cold and stormy weather in Alaska. All right, go ahead and play it forward here. That's the Pacific Trough. Here's the Greenland High. Pause it right here. So if we get into a situation the Greenland High regime dominates in the early to mid part of January, we typically get storms across the country bringing frequent rain and perhaps some snow if just enough cold air is there, and a very warm pattern to the north across Canada and Greenland. All right, let's play it here. The Alaska Ridge regime, pause it right here. This, if you want cold, this is the coldest pattern across the east. It brings the cold straight down from Alaska into our area. We have occasional snow with it, and the warm weather is confined to Alaska and the western part of the U.S. All right, go ahead and play it forward here. Pacific Ridge regime, warmest pattern in the east, no electric bill, very warm. That is not going to happen in January, but this is the regime that brings the warmest weather to our region. All right, so play it forward here. Here's the amount of snow, or the snow cover extent across the northern hemisphere right now. Very cold across Russia, but in the U.S., we have some snow in Canada until you get to the western part, and very little across the U.S., just across the spine of the Rockies and the Great Lakes. Go ahead and play it forward. The snow cover we have now is comparable to what we would see in April, which means we would need a sustainable, in order to get a sustainable cold pattern, we need a lot more snow cover upstream. Otherwise, we're going to be in a lot of these mixed precipitation events, even in the right pattern in the early to mid part of January. So the bottom line, folks, here is that here's what we can expect going forward. We will have a couple of mixed events, pause it right here, but the best shot of a big storm locally will be late January into February as we finally start to build the snow cover north and west where that cold air mass will originate. It gets more modified if it moves over ground that's green rather than white with a lot of snow. So keep that in mind going forward. We'll likely have some mixed precipitation events. Even if the pattern dictates we should have a big snow in our region, we will continue to follow the forecast here from the Storm Watch Weather Center. Chief Meteorologist Chad Merrill for Newswatch.
That was fascinating. A lot of information and a lot of different patterns there,
Yeah.
But so I like how you summed it up all at the end there. So the bottom line is if we do get a good snow, it's going to be later January into February.
Right, because we have to build that snowpack where the cold air comes from. That cold air mass modifies as it moves across the country. And it's going to, right now, that cold air mass moves through, it's modifying significantly because there's no snow all the way up and through Canada and parts of the northern plains. So that air mass modifies. If we get a nice snowpack from Montana into the northern plains and the upper Midwest, and we lock in a cold pattern, that's when we will have a couple of weeks of cold and snow that will bring about 90% of our accumulation. But we need to build that snowpack first.
Yeah.
Because that air automatically modifies as soon as it moves over a green ground versus the snowpack ground.
All right, thank you, Chad.
Very
I
good.
understood everything you just said. Thank you. And then we have more news and sports coming up after this.